Welcome to the Wednesday, November 17th, 2021 Garrison Board of Education regular business meeting. We will now call this meeting to order. Dusty, will you call the roll for us, please?
Jocelyn Apicello.
Here.
David Gelber.
Here.
Madeline Julian.
Here.
Courtney McCarthy.
Here.
Kent Schott.
Here.
Matthew Spicer.
Here.
Sarah Tormey.
Here. Thank you. We will now have the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next up, I have agenda changes and approval. Before we have the motion, do I have any agenda changes this evening?
I propose that we move public comment up in the agenda so that it's following the presentations.
You'd like to move it to after item D on the communication task force discussion?
Yes.
Do I have any other thoughts regarding this move this evening? I will just say, I think going forward, I'd like to try and keep it after the business items, but I understand we have an audience tonight, but I would like to make sure we give people the chance to comment on all of the business items as well.
That's fair. I think that they can comment on business items at any point though, right? They don't have to wait because they have the agenda.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll add, I'll add that I agree with Jocelyn. I think it's a good idea to get people, give people the opportunity to speak early in the meeting.
Okay. All right. Then I will say, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby approves the agenda as amended. May I have a motion, please?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Abstentions? Okay, thank you. All right, next up, we have the Environmental Education Program with Mrs. Rachel Arbor here to present. You have the podium, Ms. Arbor. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. All right, I'm going to need to move the mic down a little bit. Well, hi, thank you so much for having me here. It's really nice to be not just at this meeting, but in Garrison as part of this incredibly avant-garde program that we're developing. So I'm very excited to introduce our new environmental ed program that we're in the process of building. My goal as an educator, sorry, it's been a while since I've spoken in front of a mic, is to make students excited about the world around them and to give them the tools to answer the questions that they might have about the natural world. So I always start with a science fact of the day. And the science fact of the day is that the New Horizons spacecraft, which launched in 2006, it took 10 years to get from Earth to Pluto, moving at a velocity of miles per hour, or 16,000 meters in 1 second. Pretty incredible. 10 years to move at this speed, 16,000 of these in 1 second. So that's a science fact. I really like that graphic because I like flying planes, and this is what you might see looking out the window of various aircraft. So the image on the left is a 747, which is a really common commercial aircraft. The image in the middle is an SR-71 Blackbird, which is a fighter jet. And all the way over there on the right is what you might see if you looked out the window of the New Horizons spacecraft, assuming it's, following the clouds and not going into space. You can move on to the next slide. So before I talk about the content that I'm developing, I really want to talk about the skills and dispositions that we're trying to cultivate in our Garrison students. So who is an environmentalist? Someone who's curious, who wonders about the world around them. Someone who's empathetic and can appreciate the perspective of someone else and what life might be like from that perspective. Someone who's a critical thinker, who can evaluate information and think critically about the information they're receiving. A problem solver, so you're going to hear a lot about us solving problems tonight. An environmentalist especially needs to be a problem solver because we are charged with helping solve the problems of our world. An interdisciplinary thinker, a lot of these are taken from the vision of the graduate, but this one I added because I think it's really important to understand the same problem from a number of different perspectives so we can really understand a holistic issue. and try to solve it from these different perspectives. Strong communication obviously is key to, which again you'll hear from some of our amazing fifth graders tonight, because we need to not just interpret this information, but communicate it back out to charge other people with the same passion. And lastly, a steward of the earth, right? We're trying to create environmentalists, so I really want to help foster that connection between our students and nature. So these are some of my favorite images of students who I think really encapsulate environmentalism. So you can, yeah, there you go. Lots of curiosity, lots of observation, critical thinking and problem solving, and just excitement for being outside. These are some quotes from some of the activities that we've done, both in and outside of the classroom. It might be a little small to see. These are from field trips, activities we've done in class, and activities we've done in our outdoor classroom in the forest. One of my favorites is we went to the Common Ground Farm with second grade, and we made our own salads with kale that we picked from the garden. And one of the students was like, "This is my first salad!" It was very exciting. So lots of really grateful experiences, myself included. It's just been so awe-inspiring to see students really get excited about the world that they are a part of. Another celebration is that at this point, as of last week, every single student at Garrison has had the opportunity to learn in our outdoor classroom in the school forest. So this is a picture from the South Readout, right at the top of the red and white trail. And this is 7th grade, Miss Albano's class. At the beginning, they were actually the first trip in the forest. She was having them study Lenape tribes people, and she was having them build wigwams to really encapsulate what it was like to be a Lenape tribes person. So in order to do that, we went into the forest and we read some poetry from an indigenous author. And then we did some nature journaling, really trying to harness that perspective of what must life have looked like here just 200 years ago, 400 years ago. And it was a really powerful experience. And it was just so exciting to be a part of it. If you can see in that picture, West Point is right across from where they're sitting on that picnic table, and it's just like the most incredible setting, really special. So these are all field trips beyond all of those trips to the forest. I'm happy to go into each one of them if you ever have questions about them, but I want to focus on, one of my favorites was last week, again with Miss Albano in middle school social studies. We went to the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island. So of course her students were learning about it and experiencing it through the lens of immigration. But we also pre-taught the experience with a lesson on oxidation of copper and why the Statue of Liberty is that green color. I think a lot of students didn't realize that it's actually the color, it started as the color of a penny. So we recreated that process by oxidizing pennies in our own lab in Miss Albano's class. And we have a bunch of pennies just sitting in cups of vinegar. But I think it really helped to set the scene of looking at our world through this environmental lens. And it was just such a fantastic trip. So lots of really great field trips that have already happened and also that are in the works. These are some of my favorite pictures from these field trips. It's just really beautiful. We really celebrated fall this season, and the camaraderie that comes from being in nature and learning together is just a really special thing to see. That bottom left is, where we ate our first salad. Those two second graders, really cute. So the second leg of what I've been doing with this environmental ed program is my STEAM elective, which is offered to all middle school students. And the first quarter was really focused on, again, developing those skills and dispositions that we're trying to cultivate in our environmentalists. So I had students do a water wheel project where they were representing Puerto Rico, Sweden, Israel, and Niger in Africa because of these countries' real-world access to water and resources, and then their GDPs. So they were all trying to achieve a common goal of generating hydropower by building a water wheel, but they started from different budgets based on their real-world GDPs, and it ended up in some really amazing official UN proposals where we were trading resources, we were making some donations, and I think that empathy and really kind of critical thinking, problem solving was a big part of that process. This quarter, which just started this week, we're focusing a little bit more on the background of climate change. I really just wanted to get kids introduced to the engineering design process in the first quarter. But now we're applying it to the larger discussion of energy and how it's used in different countries globally and how we can engineer solutions through renewable energy. So lots of solar energy, lots of wind energy, since we focused a little bit more on hydropower in the first quarter. The third quarter is focused more on the thinking behind the scenes, what it means to be different stakeholders representing the same issue, and how we can kind of collaborate to understand each other's perspectives and work together to achieve that common goal. And all 3 quarters are building up to the fourth quarter, which the theme of which is community-based conservation. So students ideally are creating passion projects and actually implementing those projects locally in our, not just our Garrison school community, but ideally beyond that in our Garrison town community, and maybe even bigger than that. So they are fueled by the engineering design process. And the reason I waited to show that picture until last is because that's a really big emphasis I have with my students. That failure is something I want to really normalize, and I love the engineering design process because of it, because you expect that you test your machine and there's going to be something wrong with it so that you can optimize it. So that optimization is built into the process, which I love, and I want to get students really comfortable with that part of the process so that they can be brave and think big and then learn from those mistakes to really optimize their designs. So the most important part of this education program, this environmental ed program, is the integration of standards-based learning through an environmental lens into the classroom. So these are a number of projects that are ongoing at the elementary and middle school levels. But what some amazing students are here to talk to you about tonight is a project we're doing in the 5th grade. All of these projects are cross-curricular, where students are, again, extending their learning that's already standards-based through this environmental lens. Bottom left is a kindergartner who was analyzing albedo. He had a white mitten and a black mitten, and that picture is taken with my infrared camera, and we were analyzing it, the heat signature, to understand the change in seasons, to understand weather. And it was, most of the kids were really starting to get it by the end, and then this one kid raised her hand. She's my birthday buddy, and she said, well, the electromagnetic radiation from the sun, and then went on to have this like fully accurate response. It was incredible. So there's some really exciting learning happening. In the top right corner is what we're here to focus on. We're doing a project for our sulcata tortoise named Pumpkin, and I won't spoil that because the kids are here to talk about that, but I was in the 3rd grade class on Monday. We were doing a different kind of engineering design project through the lens of forces in motion, and I told them that we're doing this project with the 5th grade, and the next day I got to school, and one of the 3rd graders had handmade this envelope with like her entire life saving of $13, and it said, in the envelope it said, money for Pumpkin, and then there's a picture of Pumpkin with the quote, I need a home. So I just bring that up because the students are really rallying behind this learning, even if it's not happening in their classrooms. So without further ado, here is our sulcata tortoise. Her name is Pumpkin. I want to preface by saying her gender is still not certain, so you might hear students using different pronouns, and that's just okay. We are going to figure it out with an X-ray eventually. But we love her, and the 5th grade has a really special experience with her because they've used the courtyard almost more than any other class just based on where their classroom is, and that's where she stays in the summer and fall. So they've really been able to interact with her. She is a very adventurous, loving tortoise. So without further ado, let's bring up our special guests. Big round of applause.
researcher, and I'm going to tell you about cicada tortoises. Cicada tortoises live in the Sahel Desert, but mostly they need it to be 95 to 105 degrees in winter mornings. In summer mornings, it needs to be 75 to 85 degrees, and tonight, 65 to 75 degrees. And cicadas also love berries and grass, but cicada tortoises have berries for treats. Not all the time. Now to talk about cicadas are vulnerable. Vulnerable means that they are close to extinction. The IUCN is trying to help keep their species alive and not endangered. The IUCN is leading a conservation organization. They are trying to spread the word to a lot of people so they can help save pumpkin species. Cicadas are vulnerable because of pet trade. Pet trade is making it so they take cicadas' eggs out of their dens and hatch them at a store and sell them. Because pumpkin species is vulnerable, it's our job to protect her. Pumpkin is silly, mostly hungry, and sweet. I like it that Pumpkin is sweet because she always tries to join our school assignments. She is always munching on grass. She's silly because she always tries getting our attention by being silly or just a tortoise.
Oh, yes. And quickly, we want to just show a video of Pumpkin walking through our courtyard just to, extend the magic a little bit. This is on YouTube, so don't worry if you can't see. She's pretty big. She's like 2 feet long, 13 inches wide, and, she's 2 feet, 2 feet long, 13 inches wide, and she's going to be about 2 feet tall. She's still growing.
Hi, my name is Aria, and I'm in 5th grade. Tonight, I will be talking about ways to meet Pumpkin's needs in her summer habitat. The first thing we were considering when brainstorming Pumpkin's habitat was safety. We thought it was very important to consider safety during this project, so here are some things we thought about. From the reptile expert, we learned cicadas don't understand glass and run into it, and Pumpkin could get hurt. To add on, glass could also burn Pumpkin if sun hit it, so we made sure no glass or any clear see-through material was used in our design. Instead, we used treated cedar wood to withstand weather. We also used tin. After research, we realized these were the best materials. After thinking about safety, we started planning ideas for her mental activity. Some of the enrichment ideas we came up with were objects Pumpkin could go over, under, or through. These we thought were good enrichment items because they could keep Pumpkin's mind busy and active. Next, we came up with ways to make sure Pumpkin stayed warm because cicada tortoises need to live in 95 degrees Fahrenheit to 105 degrees Fahrenheit. So we are going to put a few heat lamps in one specific area of Pumpkin's habitat. This area will be her basking spot. Basking is like sunbathing, but for turtles. This will make sure Pumpkin stays warm and happy. We also learned from the reptile expert that cicada tortoises do this thing known as flushing of their cloaca. To be able to do this and succeed, these tortoises need a water source. So we came up with a way to meet that requirement with some advice from the engineer, David Shunter. With him in mind, we all agreed it would be best to put a light and movable pool outside the Pumpkin's enclosure. To maintain hygiene,
the pool water will be changed often or even daily. The final thing we considered when brainstorming was food. Food will be placed into a flat bowl, which Pumpkin cannot tip over, and will be refilled when necessary. From time to time, we will also give Pumpkin treats like berries, strawberries, cantaloupe with its rind, banana chunks with their peels, and more. Now, I hope you've learned something new from me tonight. Thanks for listening.
Hi, I'm Mira, and I'm a 5th grade student. I'll be talking about the guest speakers that helped us a lot through this process. The first speaker was Emily Groth. She's a reptile expert. She taught us about Pumpkin's health, natural habitat, diet, and heat in captivity. This is what helped us to make a warm and safe shelter for Pumpkin. Our second speaker was David S. He is an engineer. He helped us with electricity and a lot of other things. We wanted to put it in an enclosed space near the courtyard. After we talked with the engineer, we decided to change the spot of where we were going to put it and where we have it now. Our third and final speakers were Madeline, Julian, and Lefty Zagorios, and they are architects. They helped us to make sure we're giving Pumpkin the sunlight she needs and also help us with the diameter and dimensions of the enclosure.
Hi, I'm Hudson, a 5th grade student who is helping to make Pumpkin, our school tortoise, a safe home. We started our design with groups. After we finished our design, we voted on the best one. My group and I won. We explained our thoughts to the class, and we also explained it to reptile expert Emily Groth. She explained all of Pumpkin's needs. Then we found out that we need both a summer home and a winter home. We bought him a winter home because winter was getting too cold, and Pumpkin needed one. So now we had to make changes. We took off the glass and put on chicken wire for the summer, and are going to get him a hole to walk outside and when he wants to. We will put cedar wood for the walls because we want non-rotting and long-lasting walls, because Pumpkin has a lot more years to live and we want him to have a long and great life.
Wow, I'm inspired. I am so proud of all of these 5th grade students, not just the ones presenting, but also the ones who came to support. Really amazing to have all of these wonderful faces here who are so invested in the learning process. For those of you at home, it was awesome and adorable. So I hope that you got that from this presentation. So a little bit more about the thinking that went into the creation of this project. So Pumpkin is our school tortoise, and this is actually the first year that she's been here year-round without her former caregiver. So this is a real need that the students are trying to address. And we realized that she needed a home. We were originally going to make it a winter home, like Hudson was saying, but winter approached pretty fast, and we needed to adjust course, which often happens with the engineering design process. But these are all the standards that this project hits across the board, which I only talk about because I think it's really valuable to see that students are doing all the learning they need to do, but through this different lens, and they're really invested in solving this real world problem. So That's just a boring slide full of words, but all you need to know is that they are experiencing this learning instead of just learning about it in the classroom. They're really getting in the dirt, pumpkins dirt specifically. You can go to the next slide. So the second half of the project is focused on that communication that I was talking about when we're thinking of the vision of the graduate. We're on the choice board right now. We started the choice board this week. And the choice board is really here so that students can reflect on their learning and communicate it back out to the rest of the community. So every student is going to complete an artifact, which is some way of peer teaching to the rest of the school about pumpkin, about why this project matters, and about what they're actually doing in their class. As you could see, just from my telling the third grade students, they cared enough to give me their life savings. So I think that having the fifth graders actually go around and teach everyone else in the school about what's happening, I think we're going to have some real big excitement from our students. And the second half is the self-expression choice, which is where they're really internalizing that information as critical thinkers, and they are communicating it back out, not just to Mrs. Earl and Miss Waters, but also to the local newspapers. So Akari, here with us this morning, or today, she completed a letter to the local newspaper that blew me out of the water. Students completed a letter for a grant proposal for the materials, and there's just such real research and rigor happening, and it's just such a cool project to be a part of. So I really have to shout out these kids are giving it their all, which is amazing. And you can go to the next slide. So my last slide is just about long-term goals for this environmental education program. Obviously, it's brand new and we're still figuring things out, so this is an ongoing conversation, but the ultimate goal is to create an aligned K-8 environmental ed curriculum that, again, goes back to that vision of the graduate with the skills and dispositions we're trying to cultivate in our students. I think the foundation of that is bringing environmental awareness to our students and really honing in and supporting that connection students have with nature, not just outside or in the forest, but out learning from experts and experiencing science in the field. I really want to make the school forest more of a regular classroom. And my long-term goal is reflected in our STEAM elective, which is not just informing students of all these things that are going on, but charging them and empowering them with the ability and the drive to actually enact these positive changes. And I'm sure this is an ongoing conversation that will continue to evolve as I continue to talk to admin, but I just want to thank you so much for listening to me. And I am so excited. This program is really special, and I feel really lucky that I get to be the one who fills the role. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mrs. Arbor. Before you go, just wanted to open it up to the board for any questions.
Yeah, sorry.
No worries. Does anyone have any questions for Mrs. Arbor? Okay, Courtney, go ahead, and then
Hi there, thank you for the presentation and thank you for bringing along families. It's always great to see a project in action. Can you talk about what your collaboration is like with teachers throughout all the grades? Do you bring them ideas and projects? Are they coming to you with ideas or saying, we're working on this? How can we bring you in? What's that like?
Yeah, definitely. So I started, I was a science teacher in Colorado before I moved here, and I know all the pressures that teachers have in the classroom, so I didn't want to go in pushing my own ideas, although I have a lot of Google Docs with ideas of what to do per standard. So I've been collaborating with teachers really in a way that works for them. So some teachers come to me, some teachers I'm looking at what their content is, what they're teaching right now, and I come up with extensions, but I really want to do it in a way that is supporting them and not just pushing my own agenda on them. And that looks different in every class. Like I'm with Miss Ricky once a 6-day cycle, but then with these fifth graders, it's like a 2-month-long project. So it really differs based on what the teachers want, but it's always driven from those standards first, thinking about what curriculum are you working on, what goals and skills are you trying to achieve, and how can we kind of finagle the middle ground.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Madeline?
I really want to thank you for bringing project-centered learning to the school. It's very exciting. And thank you for inviting Eleftheria and me to the classroom to speak to the fifth graders about architecture. And I just have to say that I was thrilled with the questions that we received. Everyone was really excited also to learn about architecture, and listening to their design was amazing. So this is a very exciting project, so I can't wait to see the final result.
Yeah, thank you so much. She and Lefty were such incredible resources, and I know our students were blown away, but I was also blown away just learning about architecture and engineering and reptiles. It was really special that you could be a part of it, so thank you.
Do I have any other questions? Matt and David, I can see you, so just wave your hand if you want to have a question. I had one for you. For the middle school STEAM elective, is that currently voluntary? You sign in for it, or is it something that is required?
Yes, so the first quarter, by the way, this ninth period elective is brand new as of this year, so it's definitely an experiment. The first quarter, it was required for 6th and 7th grade, but this quarter, it's choice-based. So it's really exciting. For the first time, we have 6th, 7th, and 8th grade in all of our different electives. And today was actually the first day of the elective, and it was a really good atmosphere to have all these different thinkers. I think they're each going to bring their own strengths to the table. So yeah, it's choice-based right now, and I think we have 23 STEAM students, and it's a great mix. I mean, it would be no matter who is in it, but I really like this class.
Thank you so much. All right, I think that's everything from us. I really appreciate your time, and I want to have another round of applause for all the students, both who presented and who came out to support tonight. Thank you, fifth grade. And thank you, Mrs. Arbor. Okay, up next, you are all welcome to stay, and we hope you will. We will be moving on to a capital project update with our Tetra Tech architects and Calgi construction. I'm going to wait a second before having you come up, Eric, just in case not everyone wishes to stay for the capital project update. Thank you again, fifth graders. Great job. One of these.
Well,
Good job.
so, it's an empty room now. That's all good.
I just want to let you know that we are very excited to hear from you.
We're glad to be here. So here tonight we have Keith Gallup from Tetra Tech.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Keith.
And Dominic Calgi from Calgi Construction. So thank you guys for having us here again. It's a pleasure to work with you on this project. And we're right now at a transition between the first area of completed work, where students and teachers are moving into new classroom spaces. That just took place in the last week. So we're just now transitioning to the new spaces, and they're still moving from some of the older spaces that we're about to take over for the next phase of construction. So let's begin our presentation. It's not going to be very long, and then we can ask questions at the end and whatever you guys want to talk about. So where we are, as I just mentioned, Renovation Area 1 is substantially complete. That's the far southern end of the elementary school, classrooms 22 through 25, and resource room 26 is also included in that area. That area and the hallway is substantially complete. Last time we spoke, we were at the cusp of a lot of issues. Most of those issues, we're happy to report, have been resolved. We have a new power service to the district. We have double power. We have the existing service, and we have the new service. It's fully operational to the switchgear that's at the back of the stage area. And we also have all the unit ventilators for the first phases of the work are on the property and installed for the active areas of construction and classroom spaces. So as of right now, we have heat in all the spaces, and that was our big concern in our last meeting, and that is fully resolved at this point. It's still, the control side is not yet done, but the heating capability is there. And the other aspects of the systems are being worked on continuously as we proceed through construction. The Renovation Area 2 is the front right-hand corner of the building, where the old science room was. Classrooms 28, 30, and 31, and the smaller office room, 27, is also in that area. And those areas have been mostly cleared out. There's still one classroom which is in the process of being moved out of that area. And then that whole space is going to be turned over to the construction group starting next week. So we'll be in there until the winter holiday break, at which point we'll be transitioning to the next phase of construction. So that's where we are in the process. So these are some pictures of the spaces as they were finished about a week and a half ago. This is that main hallway, and we have several new toilet rooms in the spaces that have been designed by Tetra. And as you can see, the tile is beautiful in there. We have this blue tile and white tile that makes it really stunning spaces. There's one toilet on the hallway and one toilet off the classroom 25, which are all complete at this time and usable. Go ahead. The classroom spaces are wide and spacious. The students, got really good reports. They love the spaces. They're airy and open. The new ventilators are in there. We have new flooring, new ceilings. Everything is nice and clean in all these spaces. And the hallway, we also have a new drinking fountain, which you see in the bottom corner there. So this is the overall phasing plan. It's a little bit too small scale to really talk about. The right-hand area is where this is. The library, well, let's just zoom into the next one. I think that's too hard to see and discuss. So the yellow area is where we're moving into now. The white area, the upper right, is the area that just finished up, classes 22 through 25 and office 26. All those spaces, as I said, are in use right now by staff, and the yellow areas are being cleared out right now. And the red lines you see are basically temporary barriers, not solid barriers, that will prevent regular access through the spaces. The yellow area is going to be dedicated to construction use, again, only happening after hours, but the students can pass through that area for egress purposes if there's an emergency or other issues that they need to get through there. The hallways will always be available for use, even though we're not encouraging students and staff to use that area for passing through. Actually, I'm sorry, I should go back for one quick second. Phase 3 is going to be the blue area. And as I mentioned, so the holiday break is going to be the transition from the yellow area, which is phase 2, to phase 3, which is classrooms 11 and 12 and the nurses area. Those are going to be under construction in January, February. And then we're still confirming the time frame for the art room and the collaboration space, which is the final piece of the interior construction for the school year. Okay, now go ahead. So here's where we are. But last time we had some discussion on change orders, and we're still processing and reviewing a number of change orders that are moving along. Last time in our discussion, we were about halfway. We're a little over halfway with pending change orders right now. The approval number hasn't changed too much. We've had a couple of construction issues related to abatement and related to the finished spaces. We also have a pending change order for that yellow renovation area related to the existing lockers, which the school and I, we all talked about it, and the decision was made to see if it was affordable move to remove those lockers. So we have a change order that's included in this number to remove the lockers and do the abatement of the flooring below those lockers for both the hallway spaces and also downstairs and the front area. So all the original lockers, which I've seen in the elementary school area, which are pretty tired and dated and are not seeing use, are going to be eliminated as part of the project within the budget of the project. So the approved changes right now, again, the GC has the bulk of the contract work. Their total contract is around $3 million, which is about half of the overall project. And they have the bulk of the change orders at this time because of the nature of construction. The Bertucci is the mechanical contractor. About half the overall construction cost. They're about $1.5 million of construction. And they are very few at this time, but there'll be more change orders related to mechanical work based on the systems and adapting the new systems to the existing spaces. There's some field conditions where we're resolving there, which we are shown on this, and there'll be more to come probably over the course of the project. And then the plumbing contractor has a few change orders related to them, and the electrical contractor has some large ones. We'll look in the next one, but the majority of the electrical contractor's work is related to the new transformers, which was required for the building, and the changes to the building to upgrade the finished spaces. We're improving the electrical systems in all the classrooms, which wasn't part of the original scope, and that was added in to improve the classroom spaces. So go ahead to the next one. This pie chart shows basically the types of change orders so far. The gray are field conditions, which are about 35%, 40% of the overall project issues are related to field conditions, which is absolutely expected in a project like this. That's why we have contingency. The orange are architect initiated changes like the transformer, things that we discovered in the design process that needed to get done to make the project function, that weren't the result of discovered conditions on site. And then the blue is owner requested items, which again is things like the lockers, the ceiling of the cafeteria, which you guys approved a while ago, things like that, which are, and other improvements to the spaces, which are making the spaces better spaces for the students and for the staff. The electrical work we were talking about to improve the outlets in the spaces, make them safer. We removed additional ceilings and so forth to make them clean and brighter and open. So a lot of those things are happening as part of the process. Go ahead. Again, as far as where we are in terms of the contract, so 33% of the overall contract has been paid out, and we're probably about 50% done with the work based on what we completed. So we're ahead of the game in terms of completing construction versus what we paid out in terms of contract work. And again, Meyer, who's the majority of it, is on track with their completed work, and the other contractors are coming behind also. So we're, of the $6 million project, we have paid about $2 million of it. We have about $4 million of work left to go in the overall project. So we're in this course of it, in terms of the overall project, we're, like I said, about halfway done, both chronologically and in terms of scope. So we're in a good position financially at this stage of the project. And go ahead to the next one. So as I mentioned, the schedule, so we're phasing through different areas of the building during the school year, moving from the Renovation Area 1 to Renovation Area 2. The work is happening after hours, and that's been challenging because of decreasing light conditions. So we just finished all the roofing work, and that sort of stuff is behind us, which right now, second shift is an entirely dark shift. So we have contractors providing their own lighting to make sure they can continue to work after hours in these spaces, both inside and outside the building. And then January, February, as we mentioned, we're going to the Area 3, classrooms 11, 13 in the nurses area. And then in March and April, or when we decide, we'll be doing the art room and the collaboration space as we wrap up the interior work. And the balance of the work is happening this summer. So that's the renovations to the library, fully renovating the kindergarten space, the music space. But right now, students are still working in original floors. We do have carpet in the kindergarten, which was an improvement which we opted to make. But generally, as we go through each phase, we're going to be completely finishing those spaces each phase as we go along. So it'll be getting better and better and better through the end of the school year. And then the rest of the summer, we'll be doing the main office entry. If you recall, there's a vestibule, which is going to be done. That's going to happen over the summer, as well as the cafeteria renovation, the upgrades to the toilet spaces by the admin area, and all the mechanical work for this portion of the building is going to be happening over the summer. The demolition of the old system and the installation of the new, all that's happening over next summer, along with flooring renovations. So the flooring that you're seeing right now in the elementary school area is going to be more to come. So all these dated floors are going to be updated with new flooring in these middle school areas as well. So, and we're all on track for substantial completion at the end of summer 2022. I think that's the last slide. So, yep, that's it. So go back to it. We may have questions to go back to.
Thank you very much. This is all good news, and I'm thrilled to hear we have heat. Does anyone have any questions for Eric? Madeline, go ahead, please. Grab a microphone, though, please.
I have a list of questions.
Yep.
That's
Not
great.
bad questions, just need information.
Ask me
here.
your questions. I'm not afraid.
So thank you, by the way, for finishing the first phase on schedule, and the spaces look beautiful. Thank you.
Well, that's the design.
Yes.
Coming true.
For that Area 1, you mentioned that it's substantially completed. What's missing?
Well, casework is a key item that was missing that wasn't shown in those photos. The casework is on site right now, is being installed as we speak. So classroom 22 is mostly complete in terms of the initial installation. None of that casework, so we're talking sinks, cubbies, large storage units, and other like cabinets and so forth. All that's being installed right now over the period of the next couple of weeks. So that's what's missing. The other thing is that mechanically speaking, we have heat, but we don't have the full ventilation, air, and all the other categories in the building management system to control that heat. Those sorts of things are going to be coming over the course of the project as we go along.
Okay, so the controls will be done before next summer for...
Well, the middle school mechanical systems are not going to be done until summer. So the overall building management system, the BMS controls, will not be 100% complete until the end of that period.
Okay.
And there's commissioning also to refine all the systems and make sure they're running smoothly, and that's going to happen over next summer as well.
That'll happen after the cooling portion is hooked up, so they can do all that commissioning at once. That's code required. So we make sure that all your ventilation rates are what they need to be. The heating is functioning the way it needs to, and the cooling is also functioning. And we did do a substantial completion inspection report for that area and issued a punch list for the contractor.
And the commissioning agent, you've been working with them, so there's no surprise at the end of next summer with the controls and
They are on board and they'll be looking at them. Train is the controls contractor, and they are also the manufacturer for the equipment. So they've been doing kind of their own commissioning up front, outside of the separate commissioning agent, the third-party commissioning agent that's required. So yeah, they've been doing as much as they can up to the point of where they are now, and then they worked with the commissioning agent.
Thank you. I just have one more question.
Go for it.
Schedule.
Matt, can I ask a question that's related to what you just asked that is not going to be anywhere near as technical? So in terms of the system, so for the new classrooms, air conditioning, late next spring, early summer, will those classrooms have air conditioning, or still not until end of summer when everything is up and running?
I'm not positive, but I believe they will be up and running. Yeah. Go ahead.
Our goal is to have it up and running for the summer, for the end of spring. By the time we have heat needs, we were planning to have it all running. We have all the equipment here to make that happen. Again, the BMS controls are lagging behind, so we may have the equipment and the capability, but not the fine-tuned control at that point. But we'll see where we are. I'm hopeful that we'll have it.
Thanks. I'm sorry, Madeline, to cut you off.
It's a zone system, so they hook up together, so that one can be put online, that side of the building, for those zones can be put online before the zone that will be done this summer.
Madeline, go ahead.
My last question is on schedule. So there's a gap in the schedule, May and June, where nothing is really happening. Is there a way to move up any work that's planned for the summer? Because there's just so much going on in the summer that it will just lower the risk of any delays or having to start the school later in the school year in September.
Right. Well, that's a great idea, and that's why we created that gap in the schedule, so we had the opportunity to either catch up on stuff that needed to get done so we weren't behind, or bring stuff ahead. All the contractors want to get stuff done as quickly as possible. We've been waiting on lead times on a number of items, so doors and hardware and other things are lagging right now. We have a lot of the flooring, we have all the flooring, we have all the ceiling tiles, we have a lot of things we can move quickly. The challenge is with opening up new areas of the work is you make decisions like, do you lose the gym? Are you ready? Do you want to start to impact the library space and shut it down for that time period? Those would be district decisions to do. That's what's holding us back, because we've sort of bitten off the chunks that are manageable. Areas we might be able to get, and we'll be looking into things like maybe just the cafeteria. Maybe we start that improvement a little earlier, or other spaces. But we're sort of, we've had some hurdles early on in terms of scheduling, and I think we're just getting back on track. We have coordination and phasing discussions with the district, which are planned for the next couple of weeks. Now that we're back on an overall schedule that we're tracking, so we don't have a complete answer, but we're definitely looking for opportunities to accelerate the work to address all those issues. And in terms of the supply issues that we're all hearing about that are happening in the markets, we're in a good position for those because of the 2 summer full school year nature of this project. All those submittals are in process or are completed, and most of those things are on order. So we're talking about 10 months out. We're in a good place to get all that done without concerns. So I think that's a great question. We'll get back to you next time about accelerations that are possible.
Do I have questions from anyone else? Matt or David at home? All right. I had one question regarding, you mentioned abatement when you removed the lockers. We anticipate there is asbestos behind those lockers?
Well, it's a little complicated. It's really impossible to know for certain.
Okay.
There was vinyl asbestos tile in that corridor that was removed before this project even started. So the main corridor did not have any abatement, but those lockers, now that we've done the removal of the floor, the indications are that the most likely there's VAT under those lockers as well, that we didn't expect before. So most likely, yes, there'll be abatement under those lockers.
When will the abatement happen? Is that something that would be scheduled for over the holiday break? Or
Yeah, we're
before?
hoping to do it. It just evolved this last week, and it's coming to a head right now. I think we're planning to do it over Thanksgiving break if we can. So we've heard you guys have a meeting next Tuesday. Expect to hear more from us before that comes.
Thank you.
But that's what we would like to do if we can.
Okay.
Just a quick question. So the lockers are being removed. Are there lockers being replaced, or are they not going to have lockers now?
I'll give that to Carl.
Sure. Yeah, no, in the classrooms, with all the casework, there are hooks for their coats and cubbies. So those lockers in the halls, as far as I can tell, got very little use. And I don't see a need for replacement, Ken. I think with the rooms set up the way they're designed, I think they'll meet all our needs. The middle school, of course, has lockers, all of our students in middle school, but it's not typical for elementary school to have lockers.
And that's what we see across the board pretty much. For elementary schools, we do the cubbies inside the classrooms. You can't have open cubbies in a corridor setting because of the fire regulations. So that's why they've been put in the classrooms, and for that grade level, we don't see that required for lockers.
Okay. Any further questions? All right, guys, thank you so much. Thank you to Facilities Committee, Matt, David, Madeline, for all your work on this as well. I greatly appreciate it. And
Thanks. Have a great
if
night.
you guys ever want to meet the tortoise, let us know.
I'm sorry?
If you want to meet the tortoise pumpkin, let
We've
us know.
met, the
You've met
pumpkin, Pumpkin has toured the construction area on her own or his own. So we're familiar with Pumpkin.
We'll let you know when the hotel's up and running. Okay. Moving on, next we have a professional development plan presented by Carl, our superintendent. Carl, you can use the podium.
I have my laptop just in case I can't read. I don't have my glasses, and I apologize for that. So, good evening. I just want to let the board know that in your packets this past Friday, you had a draft version of a professional development plan. It's okay if you haven't had a chance to review it thoroughly, because I'm going to provide an overview this evening, and you will have some time. It still is in draft form, and there is some input that we're still seeking from the board as well as our professional learning committee. So let me begin by just giving you a little background. Next slide, please, Dusty. What is the purpose of a professional learning plan? So back in 2018, New York State required districts to create a formal professional learning plan. The idea is that districts need to ensure opportunities for professional growth for all of their staff. Districts need to remain current, and teachers and administration alike, current with teaching and the profession, and also to meet the learning needs of students, which is probably the most important reason to have a formal professional learning plan. Next. So, how does Garrison provide professional learning? So although this is the first time we're creating a formal comprehensive plan, Garrison has a long history of providing quality professional learning in a variety of ways. So let me just take you through them. The first is professional learning days. Every year, the district has 4 professional learning days. 2 are in the fall, right before school begins. 1 is typically on Election Day in November, and another one is in the spring, usually April or May. On those days, students are not here, but staff is here, and that is when we do a variety of different activities. There are some requirements that occur on these days, and then there are others that are aligned with our district goals and initiatives. Another type of PD is provided through faculty meetings, department meetings, grade level meetings. They happen in a variety of ways. So for example, 3 Wednesdays per month, the staff does stay 45 minutes after school hours. One of them is always dedicated to a faculty meeting. And just to give you an example, today our staff went through the APPR plan, the Danielson rubric. We have a new tool that we're using for teacher observation. So Mrs. Zamig and I took the faculty, we walked them through this new tool that we're using and the rubric. And that's just one example. Departments meet, sometimes it's by grade level, sometimes it's by department and subject area. Also, we have a number of consultants that work with the district and have worked in previous years. Again, just some examples. Last year, or actually for the past several years, we used literacy consultants to help us align to the next gen standards. Words of Advice Literacy was the organization. They did very good work, and I think our student performance on last year's exams demonstrate that, and the work is paying off. This year, we are working with the Savas Learning Company, who they support our new math program. We have a K-8 math program entitled Envisions, and there's been a number of trainings, some at the late summer, early in the school year, and they continue throughout the year. We also have consultants, our DEI consultant, for example, April Francis. She started with the district last year. April has wonderful expertise. She worked at the state level on culturally responsive framework. She's done a lot of work with our board, with our administration and teachers, and is scheduled to do some more work later in the school year with the entire faculty. Conferences. We also, from time to time, send teachers and or administrators out to conferences. When I say time to time, we're very selective and careful about this because it's always difficult to have a teacher out of the classroom. Even if you have a competent sub, no one can replace the actual teacher. So if it's really something important and the only way to get the information is to go out to a conference, occasionally we do approve that. What we try to do is minimize how many teachers are out. And for example, sometimes if it's an important topic that we need to get information on, we may send one person and have them come back and turnkey the rest of the faculty. Another type of PD is through the Joint Professional Development Committee. This is kind of unique to Garrison. It's been in place for a number of years, but this is where teachers and or administrators teach their colleagues. So on our staff, we have a lot of in-house expertise, and this is an opportunity for people to share that expertise with their colleagues. This happens after school hours. There's a committee. In fact, Mike Sammartano and myself and 2 of our teachers are on that committee. We are planning sessions that will start in January and continue through the winter, maybe even into the spring. And it's a variety of topics, but it starts with a survey of teachers' interest, teachers' needs, and what they believe would help them enhance their teaching. And then lastly is curriculum development initiatives. These do happen throughout the year, but it's a bit more challenging to work on them during the year. The ideal time is the summer. We will be coming to the board probably around April or May with recommendations for teachers working on curriculum in the summer. I can tell you one example. You heard Rachel Arbor, who's doing a wonderful job with environmental education, but at the end of her presentation, she talked about having a K-8 alignment. That is curriculum work, and that takes time, that takes collaboration, and it has to be developed. So although there's great project-based learning going on right now, we want to make sure there is a continuity and an alignment throughout the grade levels. So that is something that I anticipate will be a summer curriculum project. Dusty, next. So who provides Garrison's professional learning? We have a number of different organizations and experts that provide learning for us. These are just some examples. I think there are 15 up there, but the district, our administration, earlier I talked about our teachers teaching teachers. Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES has outstanding PD programs. They also have a great Center for Environmental Education that we're going to access more and more of, especially with our K-8 environmental education program being developed. Sometimes we'll use Southern Westchester BOCES. They do sometimes offer different options. State Ed, of course. Another example is the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, our ruler program. was developed there. We've done training for the past 2 years with Yale. Vector Solutions is something new. Mr. Samaritano actually set this up. These are online trainings. We use this mainly for required state trainings. As public employees, things like sexual harassment in the workplace, also bloodborne pathogens, how to handle that if there's blood or fluids that a teacher or another staff member needs to protect themselves, but be able to handle that type of situation. So those are usually health and safety related, but they are required every year, and we have a great way to do it. These are high quality online training sessions that have been working really well. Google Education, the district is on a Google platform. So that is one that teachers have accessed and will continue to access. Earlier I mentioned Savvis Learning, that is our math program, PD provider. Also for phys ed, Mr. Beckley does a lot of PD through the New York State Association for Health, phys ed, health, recreation, and dance, even though we don't have a dance program, but we do cover all the other ones. Also cognitive and behavioral consultants. You may recall last year we won an award for our cognitive behavioral therapy. Our psychologist, our guidance counselor are doing great work in this area, but they have trained many other staff members, even outside of our support staff. And then, again, I don't want to be repetitive, but we do have expert consultants. April Francis is one for DEI. Also Jonathan Costa, who will be on site tomorrow working on our strategic planning committee. Dusty, next. So this is an interesting fact. So according to the Program for International Student Assessment, every single country that outperforms the US has significantly similar teacher workloads, smaller teacher workloads. Let me repeat that one more time. Every country that outperforms the US has significantly smaller teacher workloads. What does that mean? Dusty, next slide. So just some examples. If you look at Finland, it does outperform the US. Teachers in Finland teach, on an average, 553 hours per year. And when I say teach, that means direct contact with students, actual teaching in the classroom. That's not their total work hours. They probably work much more, but this is the time with students. In Japan, it's 500 hours. However, in the US, it's double that. It's over 1,000 hours of actual instructional time. Garrison is 887. That's the maximum. In our teachers' contract, teachers teach seven 42-minute periods per day. Annually, that adds up to 887 hours. So we are less than many other school districts across the country. However, we're much higher than high-performing nations. Why do I raise this point? Dusty, next. This Japanese word, jujokinyu, I hope I pronounced that correctly, translates to lesson study. And in Japan, Dusty, if you could go one more, the picture there shows teachers engaging in jujokinyu. And what you see in the picture is a teacher teaching, but other teachers and other professionals observing. What happens in Japan is after that lesson ends, a group of educators get together, and this is their main form of professional learning. They analyze that lesson, it is scrutinized, and they spend hours providing feedback, talking about what worked, what was effective, what was engaging, what didn't work, how to improve the lesson. So they're giving the teacher continual feedback. This goes on all year long. This doesn't really happen here in the US. And Dusty, if you could backtrack 2 slides, one main reason it doesn't happen is a practical reason, the time. If teachers are teaching, they have very little time for this type of activity, which is an incredibly valuable activity. So, Dusty, if you could flip back, just 2 slides. So why does this matter? In my opinion, it's not realistic that we could cut our teachers' teaching hours in half. Financially, that just would be impossible. That would require us to double our staff. and the budget could never sustain that type of increase. However, with the PD time that we do have, we need to be incredibly efficient with it. We need to make sure it's targeted, it's research-based, and that everything we do is at a high level. The time is precious, and we don't have the time that other high-performing countries have to allow our teachers to grow professionally. So I think the start of that is having a comprehensive plan. The plan is mainly for our teachers. It's also, of course, for the Board of Education that supports the PD budget and gives direction with initiatives. But I think for the teachers to really understand what is available to them and have this outlined in a formal way is important for the district. Dusty, next slide. So what is in the plan? There's 7 main categories, and when you have the time, you can look it over and certainly feel free to provide feedback. But first, needs assessment and data, which needs to guide our learning. What do I mean by that? Well, there's quantitative data, which is the 3 through 8 ELA. There's the 3 through 8 mathematics exam. There's our state report card data that we receive every year. Our Fontes and Pinnell reading scores is data we look at. STAR ELA, Math ELA, Regents exam data. That's all quantitative data. But also there's qualitative data that we look at when we think about what our professional learning needs are. So administrative observations, informal walkthroughs, formal observations, staff surveys. We're doing a survey to understand our staff's needs that just, I think, was sent out just earlier this week. We look at the New York State Teaching Standards, which really outlines best practices for schools. Also, the professional standards for educational leaders. It's not just about teacher professional learning, it's about the leaders learning as well and staying current. And also administrative input on learning needs. We're out there, we're observing what we think is important, and the feedback we're getting all contributes to coming up with a good professional learning plan. The next section in the plan is all the providers that we use. I named a few, there were actually more, but that's outlined in the plan. Also certification requirements of professional learning. So back in 2016, state ed required that every professional certification area for teachers and administrators needs to be renewed every 5 years, and you're required to have 100 hours of professional learning. So the learning that's outlined in the plan counts towards that. Also, if you attend graduate school program, you want an advanced degree, a different certification, that applies as well, but that needs to be tracked. After 5 years, it needs to be submitted to New York State for all teachers and administrators to maintain their certification. That's clearly outlined in the plan as well. Approved professional learning experiences. This talks about those conferences that I mentioned earlier. If a teacher is going out, it needs prior approval. It's got to be aligned with the district's goals and the needs. Also, the mandatory professional learning experiences, I touched on that earlier. There are a number of them. One other is just to give you an example, one of those opening conference days, we always dedicate a half of a conference day to IEP and 504 reviews. That is a state ed requirement. So every staff member who works with a child who has an IEP or 504 must have a thorough understanding of those needs before the child steps foot in the classroom in September. There's ongoing reviews, but this is one requirement that Garrison does well. Mentoring requirements, another state requirement, but I think more important than being a requirement, this is just good practice to have a solid mentoring program. Here in Garrison, we do have a mentoring program. I do believe there's some room for improvement. For example, or a lesson study, I think really should be something that we can train our teachers on. I would love to do that next summer, and for the teachers who are getting mentoring throughout the year, I do think that would be an important activity that some of that occurs, but I'd like to see more of that. And then finally, how do we evaluate whether or not the PD we're providing is of quality? Many of the sessions do have built-in evaluations at the end. We were not doing that with our teachers teaching teachers and our internal PD, but right now, Mr. Sammartano is working on an evaluation for that, so we can judge, what is working for teachers and staff and what is not, so we know how to proceed going forward. Next. So what are our next steps? So first, to review this plan, and then again, if the board, you can take your time with it, there's no urgency, but please, feel free to give me feedback either this evening or, going forward over the next couple of weeks. We also have a professional learning committee here in school. So we met once last week, but we're gonna meet again and review it and probably refine it a bit. And we have those survey results that we wanna look over, and that may also help us, inform some of the plan development. And then ensure that the professional learning plan is aligned with our district-wide goals and initiatives. So tomorrow, the Coherence Planning Committee is meeting, and we're talking about long-term goals, 2-3 years out. And it's important that what we do for professional learning supports those goals and those initiatives. So that is something that we want to make sure it covers, and I think we're off to a good start, but we may need to refine it a bit based on outcomes. And then finally, we will circle back to the board and present a final version for board approval. And I anticipate that that'll happen sometime in January, one of our January meetings. With that, I'd love to take any questions or feedback or comments from the board.
Questions? Anyone? Comments? Jocelyn?
Have we ever had a PD plan in the past? And if so, when was it done? Do you know at all? Or is this kind of a new thing that is?
Yes, there was never a comprehensive PD document.
Right.
So we did have a plan, for example, for all of the teacher sessions, teachers teaching teachers. Certainly there was a schedule and an outline of that work.
Right.
Certainly conference days had agendas and schedules. So there's certainly evidence of all of our professional learning, but it never really came together in one comprehensive document, and that's what we're trying to do here, Jocelyn.
No, I was able to read through it very briefly. I want to read more. And so I just noticed that on the committee, which is already established, that there's openings. Are you actually looking for, the higher ed and then the parent to be part of it? And would that start then, post acceptance of the plan, or are you looking for people now?
No, I am looking for people now. So that is a recommendation by New York State. In fact, I have an interview with someone from College of St. Rose.
Oh, great.
Dusty set it up for me. I think it's Friday. Anyway, my objective is twofold. One is to see if the person will join our committee, and also potentially to start hosting student teachers here in Garrison, which I think could really be helpful for us. As far as just having extra staff, it's kind of like it's mutually beneficial. We get to kind of give back to the profession, but we also can have some aspiring teachers working and learning from us. So I'm hopeful that the professor, who is very experienced and would be willing to serve on the committee, especially if we have that student-teacher relationship. And then Jocelyn, I do need a parent. I have someone in mind who has a strong background in education, and that'll be part of this review of the draft, and then that'll happen before the final version is brought back to the board.
Thank you. David, are you waiting? Yep, with a question?
Yeah, Carl, I was really fascinated by the connection between reduced teaching hours and higher scores.
Just hold on just a second, David. We're going to move the microphone. Okay, go ahead. Start again. Sorry about that.
I was fascinated by the connection that you drew between reduced teaching hours and higher scores in Iceland, Japan, elsewhere. Are you confident that there was a causal relationship?
David, can you just repeat that? You said, are you confident?
That there was a causal relationship between reduced teaching hours and higher scores?
That there's a causal relationship.
Oh, okay. We can't be 100% certain, David, but the the scores that they look at, so there's an international test. It was cited, the information that I took from an Atlantic article. But the organization that runs that assessment is very reputable. They test 15-year-olds, in I think 79 nations, and consistently year after year, the United States is behind. So for example, I think last year we were number 13. I think China was number 1. But every country that outperforms us has less teacher instructional time. Doesn't mean a shorter teacher workday. They still work the full day, but they are doing that collaborative work, that lesson study work, and that professional learning. And I can't be 100% certain, but I think the evidence is pretty strong to support that having teachers do that work, that collaboration, really makes a difference, and it does have an impact.
Thank you. Did that answer your question, David? Good.
Yeah, it raises a lot of other obvious questions about how to move closer to that model, but that's a longer discussion.
Yes.
Do I have other questions? Madeline?
Thank you for putting together a uniform professional learning plan. I think we were missing the connection, right? With the next gen and all of the new rollouts that's happening with science and math. My question is, if we have a teacher that that would like to request professional learning that is not part of this plan, is there a process for that? Something that's new, innovative, that I don't know, that's just out of the box?
Yeah. The answer is yes. So all of the teachers we use, well, it wasn't being used, but now it's being used. There's a professional learning software that we use for teachers to make those requests. The first level of approval is Allison and Mig, and then it comes to me for approval, and then Joe, because of course there may be a financial piece to it. But yes, teachers can request PD, but the offerings in there are all high quality offerings. It's not that we wouldn't consider something outside, but everything in there, for example, through Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES, those workshops are there, things from state ed, from all reputable providers. So the answer is yes, Madeline, but I hesitate because, pulling a teacher out of a classroom has to happen sometimes, but the more you do that, the more negative impact to children. So you really have to weigh, the pros versus the con, but I think sometimes it is warranted, and the answer is yes. Now in the summer, there's many ways we support teachers. Actually, our contract incentivizes teachers to continue with graduate education courses. There's a financial incentive for them if they pursue that. So that's another way that we encourage professional learning. Related to this, I'll tell you one thing. Out of we hired a number of teachers over the past year and a half, and out of all the top candidates, probably the highest quality candidates, the number one question they ask, because at the end of my interview, I always say, what questions do you have for us? Is what type of professional development does your district offer? What opportunities are there for me to learn and grow? So what that indicates to me is someone who's serious about teaching and their profession wants to know that a district is supportive of professional learning, and it matters. And I think it matters in attracting high-quality teachers, and I think it matters as far as retaining high-quality teachers. So this is an important aspect of what we do.
I have a question for you regarding the required trainings that can now be done through the Vector system.
Vector Solutions.
These days are so precious, and we have so much to accomplish. We have 2 in the beginning of the year, 2 throughout. Is it possible for them to do some of those trainings at different times, or are we limited to those 4 days even for those required trainings? Like, is it something they can just do at home? For example, the sexual harassment training, do they need to be physically here using that time?
That's a great question. The answer is you can complete them anytime. And many of our staff opted for that. So for example, we allotted some time on one of the opening conference days, but a lot of our staff they chose to focus on preparing for the upcoming school year or sitting with a teacher colleague and planning. And that was their choice, but we did give them time, and they asked if we have collaboration time, and we will do that vector training on our time. So the ability is there for them to do it after hours or over a weekend.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any further comments or questions for Carl before we move on? Right. Thank you, Carl. I appreciate it. If anyone has any further comments or thoughts, please send them on to Carl as we continue to develop the plan. Okay. Moving on then, we are up to our final discussion topic, the Communications Task Force discussion. This came out of the last board meeting and follow-up to Mr. Sammartano's presentation. Since that point, we did discuss briefly forming a task force. Again, a task force would be a limited engagement group dedicated to looking at our overall communications for the district. This would not be a board-level committee occurring on an annual basis and would run through the end of the year, possibly. We discussed at that meeting not having staff members, as we've already utilized them in a lot of other committees in terms of teacher time, but we would look to include board members and Mr. Sammartano and other administrators should they have the time in order to pursue our communications plan. David has volunteered to chair this task force, which I appreciate. And if others wish to, after our discussion, let me know if you wish to serve. We can have 2 other members serving on this. I know we all have a lot of other commitments already, but please let me know. So what we would like to discuss today is sort of what we want this communications task force to look at, what their goals would be. And this doesn't have to be like the final discussion on it. We can continue this, but as a jumping off point of what are the goals of a communications task force, what do we want it to have accomplished by the end? So if anyone has thoughts that they want to jump in with. Okay, I can start with a couple if we don't have anyone else. Or did you want to jump in, Courtney?
Yeah, I guess, I have ideas. Can you clarify like how specific you're getting here in this situation? Like, what are you asking for?
I think we need, if we're going to form a task force, we need to give it an overall view of what we wish it to accomplish. So if that is simply working with Mr. Sammartano to establish a communications-wide plan for the district, which he is already working on, but what does that mean? Does that involve, he's doing a lot of the nuts and bolts, clearly, but there are a lot of questions in his presentation that a task force could delve into outside of these meetings. That would include our use of social media. Is that the pros and cons of that? All the platforms he's bringing forth, which ones make the most sense so that when he comes back to the board, there has already been some input. And then there's the larger questions we've had as to how do we engage the community in a larger sense? Is that something this task force can do too? In terms of getting people who aren't parents in the district involved? Does it go beyond our website? Are there other unique ideas that we could draw on for engagement? Thank you. That was my thought on the task force, but yeah, we can change that too. Go ahead, Madeline.
I really like the idea of looking at our branding and cleaning that up a little bit because right now, and he showed us during the presentation that we use a lot of different images for our brand. So really understanding who we are as a district, what we are, what we stand for, what's our brand, and starting from there, and also a communication plan that aligns with our goals as a district. In our coherence plan, there was a lot that we learned from our coherence plan, the DEI task force. So looking at the district goals and aligning with that.
And I know that having a communication plan is one of the superintendent's goals. So I think that this is essential to have a task force if we can, and we get enough people to want to serve on it. I'm curious if you want to open it up like we did for the previous task forces to like include other members, or if you're keeping it, what do we all think, or is it just going to be Mike and board members, or is it open? What do you guys think?
I'll let Carl speak to that.
You know, Mike and I did speak about this. We definitely, so there's a lot of internal communication that we want to focus on, and we need feedback from our faculty, our staff, but we think we can accomplish that without giving them a responsibility. There are so many different initiatives,
right?
And in our conversations, you know, with staff members, right now they are giving us an awful lot of time. You know, coherence planning, DEI, you know, all the different committees that are functioning. So we think we can elicit feedback from our staff, give them input, but not have them commit to, you know, meeting as a task force.
And it seems like they also feel comfortable with that, like that
Yes.
they're happy to, you know.
Yes.
Okay.
My thought had been to keep it sort of small and lean and productive with utilizing the surveys for parent, community,
Yeah.
district-wide, and teacher involvement, but just to really make some progress, the less schedules you're dealing with.
Did we have a communications or some other kind of consultant last year? Am I remember, or maybe 2 years ago?
So last year we did, the board approved
Right.
a communications consultant for, I believe it was 10 hours per week. That did get scaled back once we brought in a director of technology.
So there's probably data from that person's stint that we could look at too, that might help.
There is, I believe, I mean, a lot of that was using social media posts. The time went quickly, is my understanding. If
Right.
That's correct.
Yeah, yeah. The person was excellent, but it's always difficult to be an outsider.
Yeah.
So she would try to come to events, you know, capture images, post on social media, you know, tell Garrison's story. But when you're an outsider, and of course it was COVID too, which just added to the challenge last year. But you know, she did come in and I think did a lot of good work. But what we really think, Jocelyn, is that internally, you know, we know what's happening. We know the story we want to tell, and we want to set up systems internally where we can capture, you know, all of those stories, you know, whether it be some of this project-based learning, for example, that Rachel Arbor and our students are doing. We think to set up a system where internally we can capture it visually, document it, tell the story, and get it out to the community. So, you know, we gave it a try, but I think having, you know, an outside person trying to come in and figure out all the things that are happening in Garrison it's difficult if you're not part of the team here.
Well, I mean, I think last meeting we had such a good presentation that brought up so many of the issues. So, I mean, that's obviously a great place to start. Yeah.
I think also just thinking back on what the consultant did last year, there was so much work due to COVID and specific communications. And I think we're still seeing that. I mean, maybe less so in our district at the moment, but I know there was an update recently from the Westchester Putnam School Board Association group in their town hall when they were talking about communicating with their communities. They've now looked at separating out their COVID notices to a separate day from their principal notices because they have so much of that information still going out, and to make sure people are still getting it. So I don't know if, you know, using some of the COVID times, which are still with us, but to judge, I think is hard in that. There were some other interesting things, however, in what other districts are doing to engage the community from that town hall. And I know Carl's had some ideas on this, and this is something that you've been interested in, is how do we get the community engaged and, you know, showing up at our meetings? So with some of the ideas that this task force could look at, and I don't want to ignore you guys over here on the screen too, but you know, in addition to just a communications plan, if we need to open up communications now, if we feel like the board needs more connection to the community, which is what I'm hearing, are there other new ideas out there? I know, Carl, you've had a couple that you brought from your previous district, if you want to.
Yeah, sure. You know, one example might be, sometimes community members are not comfortable attending a formal board meeting and speaking at the podium, you know, signing up and then speaking, we're on camera. It's more formal, but you know, maybe doing something a little less formal, you know, just having coffee and, you know, have, for example, maybe 2 board members and, you know, have a 30-minute open session coffee with the board and let it be a little less formal and more relaxed, and you know, maybe some of our community would appreciate that. I know a number of districts that have tried that, and we did it with mixed results. I will say there were some sessions where no one signed up, but you had to sign up. So you know, the board members knew in advance and didn't just sit around waiting. But I think things like that are certainly things to consider, to try to engage the community a bit more and be able to listen to some of their concerns or their ideas.
Okay. Just kidding. Trying to find this thing. So that's something we could, like, for example, implement earlier, is starting, maybe we start coffee hours to start hearing community ideas for the board. That doesn't involve using any teacher time. It doesn't involve these things. And I can set a schedule for us. If 2 of us show up half an hour early beforehand, we can put it in our announcement that Dusty sends out for us on Monday, that we will be there and people can come if they want. And see if that's a way to get more community engagement and thoughts on this. But so that's something else the task force could look at too, is other ideas for board communication. So, David?
You know, this idea, which I'm very excited about, it comes out of Mike Sammartano's presentation, obviously, and I'm been looking forward to an opportunity to just sort of sit down with him and brainstorm this thing. Carl, can you let him know that I'll be in touch with him, or you can contact me? But I'd love to get coffee with him and talk about what's on his mind.
Yep. We will get that set up and get this task force going. Right, Carl?
Okay.
We will. Thank you.
Do you have any other thoughts on the charge for the task force? And if you don't have them tonight, can you just email them to me? We'll put something together and then we'll have a written formal, I'd like to have something written up so that there is something that we can show that this is the charge, so the task force knows what it's looking at. So
I would agree with that. Just working for a nonprofit association where there are often volunteers or board members that get assigned to task force as a staff member, you want to have a charge, you want to have it defined so it doesn't get out of control, it doesn't go into the weeds. Because we all have strong opinions about these things, I have a feeling, and we'll all have a lot to say, so if we can narrow the focus, it'll be much more efficient.
So far I have looked at our branding and communication plan that aligns with our goals, but I'm sure there are others, so add those in.
What would be the deliverable of the task force at the end? Because I know they can't fix everything, but is it a plan? Is it what would be the deliverable?
I mean, is it evaluating his platforms that he wants to use? Is it social media? I mean, it goes through his plan probably in some ways, but that was a lot there. So I don't know if he as a staff member and with your charge, Carl, I don't know if you want all of us being in a gallery on every single one of the things in that presentation last week. You want to think about it a little bit too on the things that you might want us to focus on based on our experience or based on our role in the community. I think that might be helpful as well.
Definitely. You know, what I'm thinking right now, Kent, is, you know, external communications. I think having, you know, the board input on all that we do that's external communications is important. I think internal communications, how teachers and administrators are communicating and that type of thing, that we probably could handle internally and of course present it to the board, but, give you a recommendation. So I think the deliverable is a communications plan, something that outlines everything soup to nuts, whether it's parent-teacher communication, administration, community communication, board communication. I've seen some different models of communication plans. They vary widely, but I think, one for us, so it's clear to everyone what the expectations are, I think would be really good.
So just last question about the charge. Is it going to be drafted and then sent around, or do you want like suggestions of what it should be?
Send me any language suggestions you want. I'll compile them all. We'll get a draft going, and then we will put it up for approval. Sound like a good idea?
Yeah.
So we don't have to write it all now, but. All right.
Sounds good.
We could also, we could look to our previous charges to get a sense of what's worked, which is what Dusty has done for us so well in the past. Thank you, Dusty. All right. Anything further on our communications task force discussion? Okay. Thank you, David, again for volunteering to chair that. We'll find you some other people to help you. Okay. If we're going to forget this time, we now are moving to the public comment section of our evening. Wait for Dusty to grab the sign up and then I'll read. No one signed up, all right. No one here for public comment. I'm just going to go ahead and keep us moving then. The next up is President's remarks, and I'll be very brief and following on the heels of our discussion on communication. I just want to emphasize that if you have a question or concern that you wish to bring to the board, our emails are available on the website. You can email us. If it is more appropriate, you can go to, we ask that you follow the chain of command, go to either your child's teacher, the appropriate department. If it, for example, transportation questions, go to our Director of Facilities and Transportation. But we do want to hear from you, and we hope you feel comfortable reaching out at any time. That is the only, and I did want to say a quick thank you for everyone who organized Fall Festival. I know there were a lot of community members, board members, parents, teachers, administrators who all came out for a wonderful community event on Saturday on the Blacktop, which was really lovely. Thank you to Shella Janetta, the PTA, and the 8th grade. There were a lot of 8th graders who did a fantastic job arranging that. So it was wonderful to see our community come together again and get to share their thoughts on how the school year is going. So, all right. Carl, you're up.
Sure. Just a few quick things. First, to see the students actually in the renovated classrooms was just fantastic. The lighting, the air quality, just being in a new space, I really think is going to have a positive influence on teaching and learning. And even though they are not 100% complete, it is such a dramatic improvement, and it was just something great. And eventually, I would like to organize a board tour during the school day. And maybe we'll wait for one more phase so we have more students in new rooms, and we would love to have the board see it because we've worked very hard on this project for many years, and the results are starting to pay off. Secondly, our New York State assessment data from last year is in. Sarah, Courtney, and I talked, and at our next board meeting, Allison and I will be presenting the data. We'll do some look back and our thoughts on where we did well and where we think we fell short. And we will also lay out for the board and the community what steps we're taking moving forward to make sure we're supporting our kids based on performance and what the needs are. and what we learned from the data. Lastly, just a happy Thanksgiving to all of the board members and your families and our community. I think back a year ago, and a lot of us were planning Thanksgiving Zooms, which is so terrible. This year I guess we're dealing with high gas prices, but I'll take that over last year, and I wish you a wonderful holiday weekend with your families.
Do you have any questions for Carl? Okay, keep this moving. Next up, we have acceptance of minutes. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accept the minutes of the November 3rd, 2021 regular meeting. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Seconded.
Thank you. Questions on the minutes or comments? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays? Abstentions? No, because they can be seen. Okay, thank you. Next up, we have our financial reports. First, we have the treasurer's reports for October 2021. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accepts the treasurer report for October 2021 as presented. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have Joe here with us this evening. Does anyone have any questions regarding the treasurer's report, the revenue status report, the appropriation status report, the extra classroom activities report? Okay, I had actually one question for you. On the line for the substitute teachers, I can see sorry, I can pull it up here, but are you where you expected us to be with how much we spent from that? I know we've talked a little bit tonight and in previous meetings about, pulling teachers from classrooms for committee work, for PD, and then we also still have COVID, so teachers do need to be out when they're not feeling well and whatnot. Is that budget line where you think it should be, and do you want me to pull up the numbers for you?
Well, I would say that I would like to analyze it and give you a better estimate as to where I think we are, but we're in the range of what we expect.
Okay, thank you. Madeline?
I have to say thank you for the detailed line item. I don't think we've ever had this before, like the past year.
That actually is a requirement that you're supposed to be getting it. So it's good that you have it.
Part of it is the more you start to know what the line items mean, the more meaningful it becomes too. Like I start to feel like I understand this document better now, so that might be part of it. Yes. Do you have any other questions or comments on any of the reports as presented? Okay. All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions. Okay, internal claims audit report for October 2021. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accept the claims auditor report for October 2021 as presented. May I have a motion, please? Anyone have any questions regarding the claims audit report? Okay. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions. Thank you. Next up, we have committee reports. Jocelyn for the Planning Committee.
I'll just say I really have no report because we're going to meet tomorrow as a full board, as a full team. So next time.
Okay. Right. Personnel items. The consent agenda. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of Carl L. Albano, Superintendent, hereby approves the items of the personnel consent agenda as presented. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Carl, did you wish to speak to the consent agenda?
Sure. You've seen a lot of recommendations to appoint per diem subs. These are people that work as we need them to work. They're not permanent employees. But early in the year, we hired a number of quality substitute teachers, and many of them went off and got teaching offers. So we're happy for them, but I do think there is a real substitute teacher shortage. There's a real demand for permanent teachers. So I do think you will see this as like an ongoing cyclical type thing that will replenish the substitute teaching ranks. We'll lose many of them to permanent jobs, and we'll be happy for them. And we'll just continue every so often to replenish our ranks, so we make sure we could cover teachers as needed.
Do I have any questions for Carl regarding the consent agenda as presented? Okay, move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions. Okay, now moving on to new business, we have CSE, CPSE recommendations. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District approve the Committee on Special Education, CSE, and the Committee on Preschool Special Education, CPSE, recommendations and student placements 17142. May I have a motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions. Next, we have a request for approval of change orders, Meyer 006, Meyer 007, Meyer 08, Meyer 09, Meyer 010. Whereas the school district entered into a contract with Meyer Contracting Corporation, contractor, dated June 3rd, 2021, the contract, for the performance of general construction work in connection with the school district's reconstruction project, and whereas the school district desires and/or requires the addition of services and/or materials to be performed by contractor in connection with the project. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District approves change order numbers Meyer 006, Meyer 007, Meyer 8, Meyer 9, Meyer 10, which are attached to this resolution, authorizes the President of the Board of Education or the Superintendent of Schools to execute such change order on behalf of the school district and ratifies any action already taken by either of them in that regard, and further authorizes and ratifies all actions taken by the board president, superintendent of schools, or either of their designees to effectuate the requirements of the change order. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Do I have any questions regarding the change orders that are attached? Madam?
What, I know that the architects talked about it in the contractor, but what is the main reason for these unknown conditions or things that needed additional patching and for the corridors? I'm just trying to figure out what's the main scope.
Sure. Madeline, which one in particular are you referring to?
I guess like from all of them, right?
In general?
In general, what's the highest cost item?
And Joe, please feel free to add to this, but what you have here, you do have a combination of things. It's everything from, we decided to carpet the kindergarten classroom when we removed the old floor, and knowing that the kindergarten children would be there for an entire year, that was an added investment. Some things, the sod installation, we didn't want it to disrupt the school day, so we asked them to work after hours or early in the school year. There's also the unit ventilators in some classrooms did not line up perfectly. The exhaust, so there needed to be some masonry work. So they were all things that were unanticipated. And we do have a week, Joe and I meet weekly with all the contractors. So these things have come up, and with an old building, as you know, there are unexpected, unanticipated things. Joe, am I missing any other?
The patching and things that were required, the district did take some materials off the walls in one of the hallways, and we needed the painters to patch that up and put in some additional wood that wasn't part of the original contract. So there's every time that we do some work, there are things that come up that need to be resolved and they need to be resolved in a timely manner. And a lot of these were a bunch of these ticket items that are combined together to resolve.
Thank you.
And I'll add one last one. All the elementary classrooms, the scope of the project did not include removing the old whiteboards, chalkboards, bulletin boards. And they're probably, over 60, 70 years, they were, all different sizes, mounted crooked, and with an investment, with a nearly $10 million investment, and to do everything else in a room and leave the old bulletin boards that were, falling apart, it just didn't make sense. So that also, the interior of the rooms is new. A change order that related to this, but we do need to replace them with new whiteboards and tack boards. That will be a change order that will come before the board probably sometime within the next, month or so. So we made some decisions because we think it's like the lockers that we talked about earlier. We think it makes sense. If we're making this type of investment, let's make sure, everything is complete.
Thank you. Knowing that, and I think those are all really good reasons, but knowing that we're going to have similar change orders for the next phases of the next area of construction, because we want all of the classrooms to match, like removing the boards and things like that. Is there a way to project out and hold that money, because we know that those change orders are coming, to make sure that at the end of the project, we're not going to be over?
Yes, so I think one of the things that's important is we have asked Calgi to really dive deeper into the budget to make sure that they're presenting all the information that we need to know as far as that projection and doing the cash flows and all the things that are a part of their contract. So that is something that we've asked for that we'll be getting in the near future.
Okay, thanks.
Do you have any other questions regarding the change orders before we move to a vote? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays? Abstentions? Thank you. And I do want to say again, I know we've said it before, Carl and Joe, I appreciate your experience working with capital projects. I think it does show as we continue to come up on all of these changes and unanticipated things, such as removing the boards and the lockers and things. So thank you. Next, we have a request for approval of budget transfer. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of Carl L. Albano, Superintendent, hereby approves the budget transfer for November 2021 as presented. May I have a motion, please? So moved. Second. Okay. Do I have any questions regarding the budget transfer as presented for Joe? Okay, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays? Abstentions? Thank you. Request for approval of graphic design and branding service. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of Carl L. Albano, Superintendent, hereby approves the agreement with Cameron Maher, graphic designer, for graphic design and branding services for an amount not to exceed $1,500 and authorizes the superintendent to execute said agreement. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Seconded.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions regarding the graphic design branding services? Carl, do you want to speak to this at all? Or Kent, do you have a question?
I was looking, it doesn't seem to, the agreement, I'm not sure it's necessary, but it doesn't really state that we own the logo afterward. I don't know if that's necessary for him to put that in there, working with an artist that's creating an asset for you. But I don't know if this is the final agreement either, because it doesn't have his price in there that's attached in the notes, but just a question on that.
I think you raise a good question. What I can do, Kent, is before I execute it, have our attorney just take a quick look. It's a fairly minimal expense, $1,500. But no, I think you raise a really good point. So if the board is comfortable approving the amount before we execute an agreement with the person, we can have our attorneys take a look. If they need to add some language, we'll certainly add it.
want to make sure the attorney fee doesn't outpace the.
We have the attorneys on retainer, so.
Yeah, no, it would fall under our retainer, but I think Chris would be happy to take a look at it and let us know if we should add something.
Yeah, that's all.
Okay, move to a vote on that, if we have any other questions. Okay, all in favor of the approval for graphic design and branding services, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions, thank you. We've now reached the board member comment of our section. And I'll start with Jocelyn.
No comment.
Okay. David? No comment? Okay. Madeline?
No comment.
Courtney?
Only that, as you were talking about taking down all of those whiteboards and bulletin boards that have been up for who knows how long, I hope we have really good before pictures so that when this project is done, there can be a good, overview and, really see some before and after photos of the classrooms. It's really exciting to watch it all happen. But especially thinking of like in 2 years from now, as we've got new families coming in for them to be able to see what the school went through, what we went through, but what happened to the school, just to throw it out there.
We definitely have those photographs.
Great.
And it'll be fun when all is said and done to look back on what was.
Yeah, I know we're not there yet. That's all.
Okay.
Just a couple of things, related to communication. I really enjoyed having a presentation that had the interaction of the students tonight. Of course, biased that my son was part of the presentation, but honestly, just bringing that many parents, and it wasn't just the kids speaking. Obviously, a lot more parents from the 5th grade were here. Really nice to see that enthusiasm, and if there are creative ways to bring more students into the mix here in these meetings, I think obviously it's a great way to get communication out. Probably no better way to get communication out. Obviously, it's not that easy, and they all left with good reason, right afterward. But if there are ways to get them involved, more the better. And then just thinking a little bit about the construction project, looking at the pictures and all of that, and talking about a tour for the board. I think the more we can do to kind of show the before-after out to the community as this project goes on, the more that'll reinforce the value that they're getting from this project as well. So social media, maybe at some point there's an opportunity for PCNR or the Current to come in, see a progress update on how we're doing and how it looks. I think that could all be very positive communication-wise as well.
All good points.
Are you signing up for the communications task force? Sounds like you're inching your way to it.
I think he just jumping out 2 feet there. Matt?
That ends my comment.
You said no comment, Matt? Or, okay. I just had one quick thing, and I'm sorry, because I know you've heard a lot from me, but there was an advocacy update from NYSBA regarding our governor signed legislation expanding child safety zones around schools, and while that may not necessarily pertain to our child safety zones, Madeline, I want to say thank you again for going to NYSBA, because it shows, I think, how us taking the time to discuss some of these issues, for you going as one of the member districts and voting on them, and then NYSBA advocating can actually lead to change. So I saw that, and I was kind of excited to see that change actually happened based on.
That was one of them.
Yeah, that was one of. Apparently, it's been there for a couple of years, and we won't go into all the detail over whether they used the 2019 language or the recent one, but it's exciting to see the groups we're a part of making change with our government. So that screen's telling me I have 44 seconds before shutdown, so we're going to quickly end this meeting. We do not have executive session this evening. Next, we have unless anyone has any other further comment, we're going to move to adjournment. So be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby adjourns the meeting of November 17th, 2021. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays? Abstentions? Okay? We're done.